The sound of glass shattering against the saloon wall punctuated another cruel laugh, and Sarah Grayson knew without looking that they were talking about her again. She kept her eyes down, scrubbing harder at the wooden floor that never seemed to come clean, no matter how much elbow grease she put into it. The year was 1873, and Fort Worth, Texas, had proven itself to be nothing more than another stop on her endless journey of humiliation and survival. "Worthless Sarah at it again," one of the painted ladies called from the bar, her voice dripping with manufactured sweetness that fooled no one. "Tell me, girl, do you ever do anything right?" Sarah bit the inside of her cheek until she tasted copper. She was 22 years old, and for 22 years she had heard variations of the same insults. Too thin, too plain, too quiet, too clumsy. The orphan nobody wanted. The girl passed from one household to another like a piece of damaged goods, working for her keep, but never quite earning enough goodwill to be treated as human. "Leave her be, Clara," the bartender said without much conviction. He was already pouring another round, more interested in the coins hitting his counter than in defending the hired help. Sarah wrung out her rag into the bucket of murky water and moved to the next section of floor. Her knees ached, her hands were raw, and her stomach growled with a hunger she had learned to ignore. Mrs. Kemper, the saloon owner, provided one meal a day and a corner in the storage room to sleep. It was more than Sarah had in some places, less than she had in others. She told herself it was enough. She told herself a lot of lies to get through each day. The afternoon sun slanted through the dusty windows, casting everything in shades of amber and shadow. Fort Worth was growing, they said. The railroad had brought prosperity, new faces, new opportunities. But none of that prosperity seemed to trickle down to girls like Sarah. She was the help, the forgotten, the one people looked through rather than at. "You missed a spot," Clara said, deliberately kicking Sarah's bucket so the dirty water sloshed across the section she had just cleaned. Sarah closed her eyes and counted to 10 the way she always did. Getting angry never helped. Speaking up only made things worse. She had learned that lesson young and learned it well. "Actually, she's doing a fine job with a floor that sees more mud and tobacco juice in a day than most see in a month." The voice was new, deep as a canyon, and rough as tree bark. Sarah looked up slowly, her heart doing something strange in her chest. The man standing in the doorway was unlike anyone she had ever seen. He had to be well over 6 feet tall, with shoulders so broad they nearly filled the frame. His hair was dark brown and fell past his collar, and his face was weathered by sun and wind into something that spoke of endless days in the mountains. His arms, visible beneath rolled shirt sleeves, were corded with muscle that came from real work, not the kind of soft living most men in town aspired to. But it was his eyes that caught her attention. Gray as a winter storm, they looked at her the way no one ever had, like she was actually there, like she mattered. "Who asked you?" Clara snapped, though her tone was noticeably less sharp than it had been moments before. "Nobody," the man said easily. "But I am asking now. Does this establishment have rooms available, or do you just employ your help to clean the same spot over and over while you all stand around being cruel about it?" The bartender straightened up fast. "We have rooms, mister. $1 a night, 2 if you want meals included." "I will take a room for the week then," the stranger said, pulling coins from his pocket without taking his eyes off Clara. "And I expect that when I come down for supper, I will see this young lady being treated with the same respect you would show any other worker. Are we clear?" "Listen here," Clara started, her painted face flushing with indignation. "I do not think I was talking to you," the man interrupted calmly. "I was talking to the man who takes my money and presumably wants to keep taking it. So, are we clear?" The bartender nodded quickly. "Clear as glass, mister. Clara, get back to work." Sarah watched the exchange in stunned silence, her rag dripping forgotten in her hand. The stranger finally looked down at her again, and the corner of his mouth lifted in something that was not quite a smile but was the closest thing to kindness she had seen in months. "What is your name?" he asked. She should not answer. She should keep her head down and stay invisible. That was how you survived. But something about the genuine curiosity in his question made her tongue loosen despite her better judgment. "Sarah Grayson," she said quietly. Sarah Grayson," he repeated as if testing the weight of it. "I am Owen Elridge. It's a pleasure to make your acquaintance." He said it like she was a lady in a fine dress rather than an orphan girl on her knees with a scrub brush. He said it like he meant it. Then he turned and followed the bartender upstairs, his heavy boots thudding on the wooden steps, leaving Sarah alone with her racing thoughts and the burning stares of Clara and the others. "Well," Clara hissed, "looks like worthless Sarah has caught herself a protector. Wonder how long that will last." Sarah did not answer. She went back to scrubbing, but something had shifted in the stale air of the saloon. Something had changed, though she could not name it yet. She only knew that for the first time in her life, someone had stood up for her. Someone had looked at her like she was worth defending, and that someone had the kind of eyes that saw straight through to the truth of things. Owen Elridge came down for supper exactly when the bartender said it would be served. He took a table in the corner, his back to the wall, in the way of men who had spent time in places where such precautions mattered. Sarah tried not to watch him as she served the other patrons, but she could feel his gaze following her movements around the room. Mrs. Kemper had emerged from her office when she heard there was a paying guest, and she was suddenly all gracious hospitality. She served Owen herself, piling his plate high with roast beef and potatoes, chattering about what a fine establishment she ran, and how fortunate he was to have found them. "That girl there," Owen said, interrupting her flow of words and gesturing to Sarah. "She has not eaten." Mrs. Kemper blinked. "Sarah? Oh, she will eat later after the guests are served." "She will eat now," Owen said. "It was not a request. With a plate as full as mine, and she will sit down while she eats it." "Now see here, Mr. Elridge," Mrs. Kemper started, her face pinching. "I run my establishment my way, and I do not take kindly to guests telling me how to manage my help." Owen leaned back in his chair, studying the older woman with an expression that gave nothing away. "And I do not take kindly to staying in establishments that starve young women while feeding paying guests. So you have a choice, Mrs. Kemper. You can fix that girl a plate and let her eat in peace, or I can take my week's payment back and find accommodations elsewhere. I hear the boarding house on Main Street has good food and better company." The saloon had gone quiet. Everyone was watching now, waiting to see how this confrontation would play out. Sarah felt her face burning, torn between gratitude and mortification at being the center of such attention. Mrs. Kemper's mouth opened and closed like a landed fish. The money Owen had paid was substantial, enough to matter. Finally, she turned sharply toward Sarah. "Fix yourself a plate, girl, and be quick about it." Sarah moved on shaking legs to the kitchen, hardly believing what had just happened. She filled a plate with trembling hands, taking portions that seemed almost sinfully large after years of scraps and leftovers. When she emerged, every eye in the room was still on her. "Come here," Owen said, gesturing to the empty chair at his table. "I should not," Sarah whispered. "It will only make things worse later." "It will make things worse if you do not," Owen countered, "because then I will have to keep arguing with Mrs. Kemper, and I am trying to enjoy my supper. So please, sit down and eat." Sarah sat, perching on the edge of the chair like a bird ready to take flight. Up close, Owen Elridge was even more imposing. His hands were huge, scarred and calloused, the hands of a man who had worked hard his entire life. There was a knife strapped to his belt, worn from use, and she could see the edge of what looked like a rifle strap across his back. "How long have you worked here?" Owen asked, cutting into his beef with calm efficiency. 3 months, Sarah said quietly. She forced herself to take a bite of food, and the taste was so good it almost made her cry. "Before that, I worked at a ranch house outside of town. Before that, a boarding house in Dallas." "You move around a lot." It was a statement, not a question, but Sarah answered anyway. "Nobody wants to keep me long. I am not fast enough or strong enough or pretty enough. I make mistakes. I am worthless." She said it matter-of-factly, the way you would describe the color of the sky. It was simply a truth she had lived with for so long that it no longer even hurt. Owen stopped eating and looked at her so intently that she had to drop her gaze. "Who told you that?" "Everyone," Sarah said simply, "my whole life. The matron at the orphanage used to say I was worthless as dirt and would never amount to anything. Every family that took me in said some version of the same, every employer I have ever had." "Then everyone has been a damn fool," Owen said bluntly. "Begging your pardon for the language." Sarah looked up in surprise, her fork halfway to her mouth. "You do not even know me." "I know enough," Owen said. "I know you were on your knees scrubbing a floor that would never pass for clean no matter what you did. I know you kept your head down when those women were being cruel. I know you did not complain or argue or make excuses, and I know that when I asked your name, You looked at me like nobody had asked you that question in a long time. That tells me plenty about you and plenty about this town." Sarah did not know what to say to that. She ate in silence, acutely aware of the weight of Owen's attention and the hostile stares from everyone else in the room. Clara was whispering behind her hand to another painted lady, both of them shooting daggers at Sarah with their eyes. "Where are you from?" Sarah asked finally, desperate to turn the conversation away from herself. "The mountains," Owen said. "Been trapping and hunting up in Colorado territory for the better part of 10 years. Got tired of the solitude, thought I would come down to civilization for a spell, and see if I remembered how to talk to people." "Did you?" Sarah asked, and then immediately wondered if she had been too forward. But Owen just laughed, a deep rumbling sound that seemed to come from somewhere in his chest. "Still working on it, apparently. My social graces are a bit rusty." "You seem perfectly fine to me," Sarah said honestly. "Better than fine, actually." He seemed like something out of a story, a hero from one of the dime novels she had glimpsed in shop windows but never had the money to buy. "Well then," Owen said, his gray eyes crinkling at the corners, "I appreciate the vote of confidence, Miss Grayson." They finished their meals in companionable silence, and Sarah could not remember the last time food had tasted so good or silence had felt so comfortable. When they were done, Mrs. Kemper swooped in to clear the plates herself, still radiating disapproval, but not quite brave enough to say anything more. Thank you," Sarah said quietly as she stood to return to her duties. "For the meal, and for—" "No thanks needed," Owen said. "Though I would appreciate it if you could tell me where a man might find decent supplies in this town. I need to stock up before I head back north." "Johnson's Mercantile on 3rd Street, Sarah said. "He is honest, and his prices are fair. Tell him Sarah sent you and he will give you good service." Owen nodded, filing the information away. "I will do that. Good night, Miss Grayson." "Good night, Mr. Elridge." Sarah went back to work, but she could feel something warm blooming in her chest, something dangerous and fragile that she did not dare examine too closely. Hope was a luxury she had learned not to afford. That night, lying on her thin blanket in the storage room, Sarah stared at the ceiling and replayed the conversation over and over in her mind. The way Owen had looked at her. The way he had defended her without even knowing her. The way he had called everyone else fools for not seeing her worth. Nobody had ever done that before. Nobody had ever suggested that maybe the problem was not with Sarah, but with the people judging her. She fell asleep with a smile on her face for the first time in months. The next morning, Sarah woke before dawn as always and began her morning chores. The saloon was quiet at this hour, peaceful almost, with early light creeping through the windows and painting everything gold. She swept the floor, wiped down tables, and started the fire in the kitchen stove for breakfast. She was surprised when Owen came down the stairs just as the sun was properly rising. Most guests slept late, especially after a night of drinking, though Owen had not partaken of alcohol as far as she had seen. "Morning," he said, his voice still rough with sleep. "Good morning," Sarah replied, wiping her hands on her apron. "Breakfast will not be ready for another hour, I'm afraid." "That is all right. I was hoping to catch you, actually," Owen said. He leaned against the doorframe, and Sarah tried not to notice how the morning light caught in his dark hair or how his arms strained against his shirt sleeves. "I'm heading to the Mercantile today, and I was wondering if you might have some time to show me around town. I am terrible at finding my way in cities." Sarah blinked. "Fort Worth is hardly a city, Mr. Elridge." "It is compared to a mountain pass," Owen said with a slight smile. "And please, call me Owen. Mr. Elridge makes me feel like my father." "I should not," Sarah said automatically. "It would not be proper." "I suspect propriety is overrated," Owen said. "But I will not press. The offer stands either way. I would appreciate a guide, and I would be happy to pay for your time." "Pay me?" Sarah felt her face flush. "I could not take your money for just walking around town." "Why not? You would be providing a service. I pay for services rendered. That is how the world works." "Mrs. Kemper would never let me leave in the middle of the day," Sarah said, though part of her desperately wanted to say yes. The idea of spending more time with Owen, of talking to someone who treated her like a person, was intoxicating. "What if I asked Mrs. Kemper if I could borrow you for a few hours?" Owen suggested. "As a personal favor to a paying guest?" Sarah bit her lip, torn between desire and practicality. She would make me pay for it later. She always does. Owen's expression darkened. Does she hurt you? Not with her hands, Sarah said quietly. But there are other ways to hurt people. Yes, Owen said slowly. I suppose there are. All right then, forget I asked. I did not mean to make trouble for you. He turned to go back upstairs, and Sarah felt panic flutter in her chest. He would leave soon, probably today or tomorrow, and she would never see him again. He would return to his mountains, and she would remain here scrubbing floors and being invisible. The thought was suddenly unbearable. Wait, she called out before she could stop herself. Owen turned back, eyebrows raised. I get an hour for lunch, usually around noon. I could show you around then, if you're willing to wait. Owen's face broke into a genuine smile, and Sarah felt her stomach do a strange flip. I am willing to wait, Sarah. Thank you. He used her first name, and it sounded different in his voice than it ever had before, not like an afterthought or a reprimand, like something that mattered. The morning passed in a blur of work and anticipation. Sarah caught herself watching the clock on the wall, counting down the minutes until noon. It was foolish, she told herself, dangerous. Owen was just being kind because he was a decent man who did not like seeing people mistreated. There was nothing more to it than that. But when noon finally arrived and Owen appeared at the bottom of the stairs, dressed in clean clothes with his hair tied back, Sarah could not quite suppress her smile. Ready? He asked. Ready? Sarah confirmed, untying her apron with shaking fingers. And where exactly are you going? Mrs. Kemper's sharp voice cut through the moment like a knife. She emerged from her office, arms crossed and eyes narrowed. I asked Miss Grayson to show me around town during her lunch hour, Owen said smoothly. I hope that is acceptable? Mrs. Kemper looked between them, suspicion written across her face. Sarah has chores to complete. And I am sure she will complete them when she returns, Owen said. But a person is allowed to eat lunch, are they not? I'm simply offering to buy her a meal at that restaurant I saw on Main Street. The one with the blue awning. The Blue Bell? Mrs. Kemper's expression shifted from suspicious to calculating. That's a fine establishment. Expensive. I can afford it, Owen said dryly. There was a long pause, and then Mrs. Kemper waved her hand dismissively. Fine. 1 hour, Sarah. Not a minute more, or you will be scrubbing pots until midnight. Yes, madam, Sarah said quickly, grabbing her shawl before Mrs. Kemper could change her mind. Outside, the Texas sun was bright and hot, and the street was busy with wagons and horses and people going about their business. Sarah felt strangely exposed walking down the street beside Owen, aware of the glances they were attracting. She was used to being invisible, but Owen made invisibility impossible. He was too tall, too striking, too present. Tell me about Fort Worth, Owen said as they walked. How long has this town been here? Since 1849, Sarah said, grateful for the neutral topic. It started as a military outpost. The soldiers are gone now, but the fort gave the town its name. It has grown a lot since the railroad came through. There are almost 2,000 people living here now. 2,000, Owen repeated, sounding slightly horrified. That's a lot of folks in one place. Is it really so quiet in the mountains? Sarah asked curiously. Quiet is not quite the right word, Owen said thoughtfully. The mountains are loud in their own way. Wind through the pines, water rushing over rocks, elk calling in the evening. But it is a different kind of noise, natural, honest. Out there, you know exactly where you stand. A bear does not pretend to be your friend before it tries to eat you. Sarah laughed, surprised by the comparison. Are you saying Fort Worth is full of bears pretending to be people? Something like that, Owen said with a grin, though that seems unkind to bears. They reached the Blue Bell restaurant, and Owen held the door open for Sarah with old-fashioned courtesy. Inside, the restaurant was nicer than anywhere Sarah had ever eaten. There were actual tablecloths, and the smell of fresh bread made her mouth water. The hostess looked Sarah up and down with barely concealed disdain, taking in her worn dress and work-roughened hands. I'm not sure we have space available, she said coolly. That table there looks empty, Owen said, his voice taking on a dangerous edge, and I have money that spends just as well as anyone else's. So unless you want to explain to your owner why you turned away paying customers, I suggest you seat us. The hostess's professional smile returned immediately. Of course, sir. Right this way. They were seated at a table by the window, and Sarah felt completely out of place. The other diners were well-dressed townspeople, merchants and their wives, the kind of people who would never acknowledge someone like her on the street. "You did not have to do this," Sarah said quietly once they were alone. "I would have been happy with food from the street vendor." "Maybe I wanted to do this," Owen said. "Maybe I wanted to sit in a nice restaurant with good company and enjoy a proper meal. Is that so hard to believe?" "Yes," Sarah said honestly. "People do not do nice things for me, Owen, not without wanting something in return." Owen leaned forward, his gray eyes intense. "I want something in return, Sarah. I want you to stop calling yourself worthless. I want you to sit up straight and look people in the eye. I want you to believe just for 1 hour that you deserve to be here as much as anyone else in this room. Can you do that for me?" Sarah stared at him, stunned. "Why do you care?" "Because somebody should," Owen said simply. "And right now, that somebody is me." The waiter came and took their orders, and Sarah chose carefully, aware of the prices, even though Owen had said cost did not matter. They ordered roasted chicken with vegetables and fresh bread, and when the food arrived, it was the best thing Sarah had tasted in her entire life. "Tell me about the mountains," Sarah said, wanting to know everything about this man who had appeared in her life like some kind of answer to a prayer she had never voiced. Owen's face softened as he talked. He told her about long days tracking elk through pine forests, about nights spent under stars so bright and numerous they looked like spilled salt. He told her about the pure silence of fresh snow, about hot springs hidden in remote valleys, about the satisfaction of living by your own skills and strength. "It sounds beautiful," Sarah said wistfully. "It is," Owen agreed, "but it is also lonely. That is why I came down to civilization, I suppose, to remember what it is like to talk to another human being, to remember why I'm working so hard up there." "What are you working toward?" Sarah asked. Owen hesitated, then seemed to decide something. "Land. Good land, near water, with timber and game. I've been saving every dollar I can for 10 years now. I'm close to having enough to buy a proper spread and build a cabin that's more than 4 walls and a roof, a place that could be a home, not just a shelter." "That sounds wonderful," Sarah said, and meant it. She tried to imagine what it would be like to have a place that was truly yours, a place where nobody could tell you to leave, or that you were not good enough. "What about you?" Owen asked. "What do you want, Sarah?" Nobody had ever asked her that before. Sarah opened her mouth and then closed it again, struggling to find words for things she had barely let herself think about. "I want to matter," she said finally. "I want to wake up in the morning and not dread every hour of the day. I want to be somewhere that I am not just tolerated, but actually wanted. I want someone to look at me and see something other than a burden or a disappointment." "I see something other than that," Owen said quietly. Sarah looked up and found him watching her with an expression that made her breath catch. There was something in his eyes, something warm and real and terrifying in its intensity. "You barely know me," Sarah whispered. "I know enough," Owen said. "I know you are stronger than you think. I know you have survived things that would have broken most people. I know you have kindness in you despite all the cruelty you have faced. That is not worthless, Sarah. That is precious." The word hung between them like something tangible. Precious. Sarah Grayson, who had been called worthless her entire life, being called precious by a mountain man with storm-gray eyes and hands that could probably break a man in half, but held his fork with surprising gentleness. "I do not know what to say," Sarah admitted. "You do not have to say anything," Owen said. "Just promise me you will think about what I said. Promise me you will stop believing the lies people have told you." "I will try," Sarah said, and she meant it. They finished their meal, and Owen insisted on ordering dessert, apple pie with fresh cream that tasted like heaven. Then, too soon, the hour was up and they had to return to the saloon. "Thank you," Sarah said as they stood outside Mrs. Kemper's establishment. "For lunch? For everything? Will I see you at supper?" Owen asked. "I will be serving, yes," Sarah said. "Good," Owen said. Then, after a moment's hesitation, he reached out and tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear. The gesture was so gentle, so tender, that Sarah felt tears prick at her eyes. "Good," he said again, softer this time. Then he turned and walked away toward the mercantile, leaving Sarah standing on the dusty street with her heart pounding and her mind racing. The afternoon was torture. Sarah went through her chores mechanically, scrubbing and sweeping and hauling, but her mind was miles away. She kept replaying the lunch, the things Owen had said, the way he had looked at her. It was dangerous to let herself hope, dangerous to let herself care. Owen would leave and she would still be here, and getting attached would only make the hurt worse. But oh, she was already attached. She was already halfway to something terrifying and wonderful, and she did not know how to stop it. When supper time rolled around, Sarah dressed in her cleanest dress and actually took a moment to fix her hair properly. It was vanity, something she rarely indulged in, but tonight she wanted to look nice. For Owen. He came down exactly at 6, freshly washed and with his hair still damp. He smiled when he saw her, a smile that seemed meant just for her, and Sarah felt warmth bloom in her chest. The evening crowd was larger than usual, the saloon packed with men drinking and playing cards. Sarah moved between the tables with practiced efficiency, delivering food and dodging wandering hands with long practice. She was used to this, used to being grabbed at, used to the lewd comments and casual disrespect. But tonight, when a drunk cowboy caught her around the waist and tried to pull her into his lap, she heard a chair scrape back hard across the wooden floor. "Let her go." Owen's voice was quiet, but carried the weight of a threat. The entire saloon seemed to still, conversations dying mid-sentence as everyone turned to look. The cowboy was too drunk to read the danger in Owen's tone. "Mind your business, stranger. We're just having a little fun." "I will say it once more," Owen said, moving closer. "Let her go." "And what are you going to do if I do not?" the cowboy sneered. What happened next happened so fast Sarah barely registered it. Owen's hand shot out, grabbed the cowboy's wrist and applied pressure. The cowboy yelped and released Sarah immediately, cradling his arm against his chest. "You broke my wrist," he howled. "I did not," Owen said calmly, "but I will if you touch her again. That goes for everyone in this room. This woman is under my protection. Anyone who has a problem with that can take it up with me outside." There was a long, tense silence. The cowboys' friends were half standing, hands moving toward their guns, but something in Owen's stance made them reconsider. He was not armed, as far as Sarah could see, but he carried himself like a man who did not need weapons to be dangerous. "There will not be any gunplay in my establishment," Mrs. Kemper said sharply, appearing from her office like a wraith. "Take your disputes outside or take them elsewhere entirely." The moment broke. The cowboys grumbled but stayed seated. Owen returned to his table, though Sarah noticed he kept himself positioned between her and the rest of the room for the remainder of the evening. When the last patron finally stumbled out and Sarah began cleaning up, Owen lingered at his table, nursing a cup of coffee. "You should not have done that," Sarah said quietly as she wiped down a nearby table. "You could have been hurt." "Those drunk fools could not hurt me if they tried," Owen said dismissively. "Besides, I meant what I said. Nobody touches you like that while I am here." "But you will not always be here," Sarah said, the words coming out more bitter than she intended. "You will leave in a few days, and then things will go back to how they were. Probably worse, because now everyone will think I put on airs, getting a mountain man to fight my battles." Owen stood and crossed to her in 2 long strides. He was close enough that Sarah could smell pine and leather and something uniquely him. "What if I did not leave?" Sarah's breath caught. "What? What if I stayed in Fort Worth for a while longer?" Owen said. "Would that be so terrible?" "Why would you do that?" Sarah asked, hardly daring to hope. "Because I want to," Owen said. "Because in 2 days I have had more interesting conversations with you than I have had in the past 2 years with anyone else. Because when I think about riding back to Colorado, the thing that bothers me most is not leaving behind civilization, but leaving behind you." "You do not know me," Sarah protested weakly. "You said you wanted to find land, build a home." "I did say that," Owen agreed, "but I'm starting to think a home is not about walls and land. It is about who you share it with, and I would like to share mine with you, Sarah, if you will have me." Sarah stared at him, her heart hammering against her ribs. "That is insane. We have known each other for 2 days. I have made decisions with less information in the mountains and survived just fine," Owen said with a slight smile. "Sometimes you just know, Sarah. Sometimes something feels right in your bones and you trust that feeling. You feel right to me. Do I feel right to you? Yes. Sarah's heart screamed, yes, 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 but her mind, trained by years of disappointment, held her back. I'm scared, she admitted in a whisper. So am I, Owen said honestly. Terrified, actually. I'm good with mountains and animals and surviving on my own. This, whatever this is between us, is completely unknown territory, but I want to explore it anyway. What do you want, Sarah? I want to believe you, Sarah said, tears stinging her eyes. I want to believe that someone could actually want me, could actually see something valuable in me. But I have been told I am worthless for so long, Owen. What if they are right? What if you wake up in a month or a year and realize you made a terrible mistake? Owen reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and cupped her face in his large calloused hands. Then we will deal with it when it happens. But I do not think it will. I think you are the most valuable thing I have found in all my years of hunting treasure in those mountains, and I intend to prove that to you every single day until you believe it yourself. A tear escaped and rolled down Sarah's cheek. Owen wiped it away with his thumb, so gentle despite his size and strength. Say yes, he urged quietly. Take a chance on me. On us. Sarah thought about her life, about the endless parade of disappointment and cruelty, about sleeping in storage rooms and eating scraps and being invisible. She thought about what she had told Owen at lunch, that she wanted to matter, wanted to be wanted. Here was a man offering her exactly that. Here was a man who had defended her, fed her, seen her. Here was a man calling her precious. Yes, Sarah breathed, the word barely audible but carrying the weight of a lifetime of hope. Owen's smile was like sunrise breaking over mountains. He bent down slowly, telegraphing his intentions, and pressed his lips to hers in a kiss that was gentle and reverent and perfect. Sarah had never been kissed before, had never been touched with anything resembling affection, and the sweetness of it nearly broke her. When they pulled apart, Owen rested his forehead against hers. We will figure the rest out as we go, he promised. But I'm not leaving you here, Sarah. Not now, not ever. Mrs. Kemper will not just let me leave, Sarah said practically, even as her heart soared. Mrs. Kemper can go to hell, Owen said bluntly. You do not owe her anything. You have worked off any debt 10 times over. We will leave tomorrow, first thing. And go where? Sarah asked. Anywhere you want, Owen said. We could head back to Colorado if you were feeling adventurous. Or we could stay in Texas, find a smaller town where people mind their own business. What matters is, we do it together. Sarah had 100 questions and 100 doubts, but underneath all of them was something stronger. Trust, faith, hope. She had given up on those things long ago, but here they were, flooding back into her heart like water into a dry creek bed. Together, she repeated, testing the word. She liked how it sounded. They talked late into the night, making plans in whispers while Mrs. Kemper slept upstairs. Owen had money saved, enough to get them started somewhere new. He knew people in Colorado who could help them find land, or they could stay in Texas, maybe head out toward the frontier where settlements were still being established, and people were too busy surviving to worry about an orphan girl's past. I want to help you build your dream, Sarah said suddenly. That cabin you talked about, the land near water. I want to be part of that. You will be, Owen promised. We will build it together. Every single board and nail, we will do it as partners. Equal partners, Sarah. I am not looking for a servant or someone to clean up after me. I'm looking for a partner to share my life with. It was more than Sarah had ever dared dream. It was everything. They parted reluctantly as dawn approached, Owen heading to his room and Sarah to her storage corner. But Sarah did not sleep. She lay awake, heart racing, mind spinning with possibilities. Tomorrow, everything would change. Tomorrow, she would walk away from this life and into something new. Tomorrow, she would stop being worthless Sarah and start being simply Sarah. Sarah Grayson, loved by Owen Elridge. Sarah Grayson, who was precious. The next morning, Sarah packed her few possessions into a cloth bag. She owned almost nothing: 2 dresses, a hairbrush, a pair of worn boots, and a small carved bird that was the only thing she had from the orphanage. It took less than 5 minutes to gather her entire life. Owen was waiting when she came down the stairs, his own pack ready. He smiled when he saw her, and Sarah felt courage flow into her like sunlight. Going somewhere? Mrs. Kemper's voice was sharp as a blade. She stood at the bottom of the stairs, arms crossed. I am leaving, Sarah said, keeping her voice steady. "Thank you for the employment, but I have found other opportunities." "Other opportunities?" Mrs. Kemper laughed harshly. "With him, I suppose. Listen here, girl. Men like him do not marry girls like you. He will use you up and throw you away, and you will come crawling back here begging for your job. But I will not take you back. Do you understand me? You leave now. You are dead to me." Sarah flinched despite herself. The words hit all her old wounds, all her old fears. She looked at Owen uncertainly. "Sarah is worth 100 of you," Owen said coldly to Mrs. Kemper, "and she will never have to crawl to anyone ever again. Come on, Sarah." He held out his hand and Sarah took it. His grip was strong and steady, anchoring her when everything else felt uncertain. Together, they walked out of the saloon and into the bright Texas morning. "I have 2 horses at the livery," Owen said as they walked down the dusty street. "We can ride out today if you are ready, or we can stay in town a few more days if you need time to prepare." "I am ready," Sarah said. She meant it. There was nothing holding her here, nothing she would miss. Only the future mattered now, and the future was walking beside her in the form of a mountain man who saw her worth when nobody else did. At the livery, Owen's horses were exactly what Sarah expected, strong, well-cared-for animals that clearly trusted their owner. Owen introduced her to them with the same courtesy he showed people. "This is Thunder," he said, patting a big gray gelding, "and this is Lightning," indicating a slightly smaller bay mare. "Lightning is gentler. She will be a good horse for you." "I have never ridden much," Sarah admitted. "At the ranch I worked at, I was not allowed to ride the horses." "Then we will take it slow," Owen said. "Lightning will take care of you. She is smart as a whip and steady as they come." He helped Sarah onto the mare's back, his hands strong and sure around her waist as he lifted her into the saddle. Then he mounted Thunder with easy grace, settling into the saddle like he was born there. "Ready?" he asked. Sarah looked back at Fort Worth one last time. Somewhere in that town, Mrs. Kemper was probably already complaining about losing her help. The painted ladies were probably laughing about worthless Sarah running off with a stranger. The townspeople who had looked through her for months would probably not even notice she was gone. Good. Let them forget her. She was leaving all of that behind. "Ready," Sarah said. They rode out of town heading northwest, and with every mile that passed, Sarah felt lighter. The wind was warm against her face, the sun bright overhead, and beside her rode the most remarkable man she had ever met. Owen checked on her frequently, making sure she was comfortable, adjusting their pace to match her inexperience. By the time they stopped for lunch near a creek, Sarah was saddle-sore but exhilarated. "How far do you want to travel today?" she asked as Owen unpacked food from his saddlebags. "As far as you can manage comfortably," Owen said. "There is no rush, Sarah. We will go at whatever pace feels right to you." They ate dried beef and hard biscuits, sitting in the shade of a cottonwood tree and listening to the water burble over rocks. It was peaceful in a way Sarah had never experienced. No one was yelling at her. No one was criticizing her. She was just sitting beside a creek with a man who looked at her like she was something precious. "Owen," Sarah said hesitantly, "what Mrs. Kemper said about you using me and throwing me away. You would not do that, would you?" Owen set down his food and turned to face her fully. "No, Sarah, I would never do that. In fact, I want to make sure you understand exactly what my intentions are. I want to marry you. Properly, legally, in front of a preacher and everything. I want you to be my wife, my partner in every sense of the word. I want to build a life with you, raise a family if that is something you want, grow old together. That is what I am offering you. That is what I am promising you." "But we barely know each other," Sarah protested, even as her heart sang at his words. "Then we will get to know each other," Owen said simply. "We have time, Sarah, all the time in the world. If you want to court properly, we can do that. If you want to wait months before we marry, we can do that too. I am not going anywhere. I am yours for as long as you will have me." "I want all of that," Sarah admitted. "Marriage and family and growing old together. I want everything you just described. But I'm scared I will mess it up somehow. That I will disappoint you." "You could never disappoint me," Owen said firmly. "Sarah, I need you to understand something. I have lived alone for 10 years. I can cook, clean, mend clothes, everything a person needs to survive. I am not looking for someone to take care of me. I'm looking for someone to share my life with, someone to talk to at the end of the day, someone to laugh with and plan with and just be with. You already give me that. Everything else is just extra. Sarah felt tears welling up again, but this time they were good tears, happy tears. I am not used to being wanted, she whispered. Get used to it, Owen said, reaching over to take her hand. Because I want you, Sarah Grayson, more than I have ever wanted anything. They continued their journey, and as the day wore on, Sarah began to relax into the rhythm of riding. Lightning was indeed a good horse, patient with Sarah's inexperience and responsive to even her clumsy commands. They talked as they rode, Owen telling stories about his years in the mountains and Sarah sharing snippets of her own much harder past. I was left at the orphanage when I was 3 days old, Sarah said. Just left on the doorstep with a note pinned to my blanket. The note said my name and nothing else. No explanation, no apology, no indication of who my parents were. That must have been hard, Owen said quietly. I do not remember my parents, so I cannot miss them, Sarah said. But the orphanage was not a good place. There were too many children and not enough of anything else. Food, clothing, kindness. The matron believed that orphans needed to learn early that life was hard and we should be grateful for anything we got. So she was strict and cold, and she made sure we knew we were burdens on society. That is no way to treat children, Owen said, his voice hard. No, Sarah agreed. But it was how we were treated. When I was 12, a family took me in to help with their household. They had 6 children of their own and needed extra hands. I thought maybe it would be better being part of a family even if I was just the help. But they worked me from dawn to dark, and when I made mistakes, they would withhold food or lock me in the cellar. I stayed 2 years before they decided I was not worth the trouble and sent me back to the orphanage. Owen was quiet for a long moment. How many families took you in? 5, Sarah said. Each one found some reason to send me back. Too slow, too clumsy, too plain, too difficult. By the time I was 17 and aged out of the orphanage, I believed every word. I thought I really was worthless. So I took whatever work I could find, and I endured whatever treatment came with it because I thought that was all I deserved. Sarah, Owen said, and his voice was rough with emotion. Sarah, look at me. She turned in her saddle to meet his eyes. They were stormy gray and intense. Every single one of those people was wrong, Owen said. Every single person who made you feel small or worthless or less than was wrong. You are not any of those things. You are strong and resilient and brave. Do you know how much courage it takes to keep getting up every day when the world has beaten you down? Do you know how remarkable it is that you still have kindness in your heart after everything you have been through? You are extraordinary, Sarah. I need you to start believing that. I am trying, Sarah said, her voice breaking. It is hard to unlearn 22 years of being told otherwise. I know, Owen said gently, and I will remind you every day for the rest of our lives if that is what it takes. You are precious to me, Sarah. You are valuable. You are wanted. Say it back to me. What? Say it, Owen insisted. Say I am valuable. I am valuable, Sarah whispered. Say I am wanted. I am wanted, Sarah said, a little louder this time. Say I am precious. I am precious, Sarah said, and this time she almost believed it. Good, Owen said with satisfaction. We will keep practicing until you believe it in your bones. They made camp that evening beside another creek, far from any town or settlement. Owen set up camp with practiced efficiency, building a fire, laying out bedrolls, and starting supper, while Sarah cared for the horses under his patient instruction. It felt good to be doing something useful, something that contributed rather than just serving. You are a natural with horses, Owen commented as Sarah brushed down Lightning. She likes you. She's a good horse, Sarah said, stroking the mare's soft nose. Thank you for letting me ride her. She's your horse now, Owen said casually. I am giving her to you. Sarah nearly dropped the brush. Owen, I cannot accept a horse. That is too much. Too much for what? Owen challenged. Too much for someone I intend to marry? Too much for my partner? Sarah, we are building a life together. That means what is mine is yours. Lightning is yours. Thunder is mine. The supplies are ours. The money I have saved is ours. Do you understand? That does not seem fair to you, Sarah protested. I am not bringing anything to this partnership. You are bringing you, Owen said firmly. That is everything, Sarah. Stop undervaluing yourself. Dinner was rabbit that Owen shot with his rifle, roasted over the fire with wild onions he found growing nearby. It was simple food but delicious, and Sarah ate with good appetite. As darkness fell, they sat by the fire and watched the stars come out. "It is so beautiful out here," Sarah said softly. "I have never seen so many stars." "Wait until we get to the mountains," Owen said. "The stars there will take your breath away. They are so bright you can almost read by them." "Tell me more about the mountains," Sarah said, moving closer to Owen's warmth as the temperature dropped. Without hesitation, he put his arm around her shoulders, and Sarah melted into his side. Owen talked about the mountains with the passion of a man describing his first love. He spoke of towering pines and crystal-clear streams, of valleys where wildflowers bloomed in such profusion they looked like colored carpets. He described the challenge of tracking elk, the satisfaction of a clean kill, the peace of sitting beside a campfire and hearing nothing but wind and wildlife. "It sounds like paradise," Sarah said wistfully. "It can be," Owen agreed. "But it is also hard. Winters are brutal. You can be snowed in for months at a time. Game gets scarce. The cold is like nothing you have experienced in Texas. You have to be tough to survive up there." "Are you trying to scare me?" Sarah asked with a slight smile. "No," Owen said. "I'm trying to be honest. I want you to know what you are getting into. If we go to Colorado, if we build our home in the mountains, it will not be easy. But I think it will be worth it. I think we can build something good there, Sarah. Something that is just ours." "I want that," Sarah said. "I am not afraid of hard work, Owen. I am used to hard work. What scares me is people, not labor. If we are in the mountains, away from towns and gossip and cruelty, I think I could be happy. I think I could be brave." "You are already brave," Owen said, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. "But I understand what you mean. We will head to Colorado then. I know a place, good land that has not been claimed yet. We can file for it properly, build a cabin, start fresh." "Together," Sarah said. "Together," Owen agreed. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the fire burn down to embers. Finally, Owen stirred. "We should get some sleep. We have another long day of riding tomorrow." He had set up 2 bedrolls, Sarah noticed, separated by a respectful distance. Owen saw her looking and smiled slightly. "I meant what I said about courting properly. You have your space, I have mine. We do not have to rush anything, Sarah." "What if I do not want so much space?" Sarah asked, surprising herself with her boldness. Owen's expression grew serious. "Sarah, I want you to be very sure about anything that happens between us. You have been through a lot and you are vulnerable right now. I will not take advantage of that. If we are going to be together, it is going to be because you genuinely want it, not because you feel obligated or grateful." "I do not feel obligated," Sarah said. "I feel safe. For the first time in my life, Owen, I feel safe. And I do not want to sleep alone tonight. I just want to be close to you. Nothing improper, I promise. I just want to feel safe." Owen studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "All right, come here." He arranged the bedrolls together and lay down, then held out his arm in invitation. Sarah settled against his side, her head on his broad chest, and felt his arm come around her protectively. She could hear his heartbeat, steady and strong, and smell the scent of pine and leather and campfire smoke that clung to him. "Thank you," she whispered. For what?" "For everything. For seeing me. For wanting me. For rescuing me." "You rescued yourself," Owen said quietly. "You survived everything life threw at you, and you came out the other side still capable of hope and trust. That is all you, Sarah. I just gave you a reason to hope for something better." Sarah closed her eyes, feeling more content than she had in her entire life. Above them, the stars wheeled across the sky, and the fire crackled softly. And in Owen's arms, Sarah finally felt like she had come home. They traveled for 6 days, moving steadily northwest through Texas and into Indian Territory. Owen was a skilled guide, finding water sources and good campsites, hunting for their food, teaching Sarah how to survive in the wilderness. She learned to build fires, to read the sky for weather, to track animals by their prints. She learned to shoot Owen's rifle, though her aim was terrible at first. "You are tensing up," Owen said, standing behind her and adjusting her grip. "The gun is a tool, not a threat. Relax your shoulders. Breathe in, exhale halfway, and squeeze the trigger gently." Sarah tried again, and this time the shot went much closer to the target Owen had set up. "I did it," she exclaimed, flushed with success. "You did," Owen agreed, grinning. "Keep practicing, and you will be bringing down deer by the time we reach Colorado." Each evening, they made camp and talked for hours. Sarah learned that Owen was 28, that he had come west from Ohio when he was 18 looking for adventure and freedom. He had tried his hand at gold prospecting, cattle driving, and a dozen other jobs before finding his calling in the mountains as a fur trapper and hunter. "I like the independence," Owen explained. "Up there, I am accountable only to myself and to nature. No bosses, no crowds, no one telling me what to do or who to be. Just me and the wilderness." "Does not it get lonely?" Sarah asked. "It did," Owen admitted, "especially in the winters. I would go months without seeing another human being. That is why I come down to civilization every year or so, to trade my furs and remember how to talk to people. This year, I met you, so I would say the loneliness was worth it." Sarah blushed at that, pleased and flustered by his open affection. Owen was not shy about his feelings. He told her daily that she was beautiful, that he was glad she had agreed to come with him, that he was falling more in love with her with every passing day. "Falling in love," Sarah repeated one evening as they sat by the fire. "Is that what is happening?" "I think it already happened," Owen said honestly. "For me, at least. I think I started falling in love with you the moment I saw you on your knees scrubbing that floor and refusing to let them break you. What about you, Sarah? How do you feel?" Sarah considered the question seriously. "I do not have anything to compare it to," she admitted. "I have never had anyone in my life who cared for me. But when I'm with you, I feel like I can breathe for the first time. When I think about the future, you are in every vision. When you smile at me, my whole world gets brighter. Is that love?" "Sounds like love to me," Owen said softly. He reached out and took her hand, threading their fingers together. "Marry me, Sarah. As soon as we reach the next town with a preacher, marry me. Make it official." "Yes," Sarah said without hesitation. "Yes, I will marry you, Owen Elridge." Owen pulled her into his arms and kissed her soundly, and Sarah kissed him back with all the emotion flooding through her heart. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard and grinning like fools. "Mrs. Sarah Elridge," Owen said, testing out the name. "It has a nice ring to it." "It does," Sarah agreed, loving the way it sounded. Sarah Elridge. Not a throwaway orphan or worthless hired help, but a wife, Owen's wife, a woman with a name and a place and a person who valued her above all others. They crossed into Colorado territory on the 7th day of their journey, the land growing more rugged and beautiful with every mile. Mountains rose in the distance, their peaks still white with snow despite the summer season. Owen grew more animated as they approached his familiar territory, pointing out landmarks and telling Sarah stories about his adventures in various locations. "There is a town about a day's ride from here," Owen said. "Leadville. It is a mining town, rough around the edges, but it has a church and a preacher. We can get married there, stock up on supplies, and then head into the high country to find our land." "How will we find land that is not already claimed?" Sarah asked. "The mountains are vast," Owen said. "There's still plenty of unclaimed territory if you know where to look. I've been scouting for years, Sarah. I know exactly where I want to settle. A valley I found 3 years ago, about 30 miles from Leadville. It has a creek running through it, good timber, protection from the worst of the winter winds. It is perfect." "It sounds perfect," Sarah agreed. She could picture it in her mind now, a little cabin nestled in a mountain valley, smoke rising from the chimney, Owen chopping wood outside while she tended a garden. It was a beautiful dream, made more beautiful by the fact that it was actually going to happen. They reached Leadville the next afternoon, and Sarah's first impression was of controlled chaos. The town was booming with the silver rush, miners flooding in from all over hoping to strike it rich. The streets were crowded and muddy, the buildings mostly rough-hewn and temporary-looking. "We will not stay long," Owen promised, seeing Sarah's overwhelmed expression, "just long enough to get married and resupply." They found the church easily enough, a small wooden structure with a simple cross mounted above the door. The preacher was a tired-looking man in his 50s who seemed surprised but pleased when Owen explained their purpose. "Marriage, you say? Well, I am happy to perform the ceremony. Do you have witnesses?" "We do not," Owen admitted. "We just arrived in town." No matter," the preacher said. "I can round up a couple of parishioners. When did you want to do this?" "Now," Owen said firmly. if you are available." The preacher laughed. "Eager, are we? Well, I suppose there's no reason to wait. Let me just find Mrs. Patterson and Mr. Henley. They usually help out with these things." 20 minutes later, Sarah stood in the small church wearing her best dress, which was not very good at all, holding Owen's hands and listening to the preacher recite the marriage vows. It was not the wedding she had dreamed of as a little girl, if she was honest. There were no flowers or music or fancy dress, but none of that mattered because Owen was looking at her like she was the most beautiful woman in the world, and his hands were warm and steady around hers. "Do you, Owen Elridge, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better or worse, for richer or poorer, in sickness and in health, until death do you part?" "I do," Owen said, his voice strong and sure. "And do you, Sarah Grayson, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better or worse, for richer or poorer, in sickness and in health, until death do you part?" "I do," Sarah said, her voice trembling slightly with emotion. "Then by the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss your bride." Owen pulled Sarah into his arms and kissed her thoroughly, and Sarah kissed him back, happiness flooding through her in waves. When they broke apart, the two witnesses were clapping, and the preacher was beaming. "Congratulations, Mr. and Mrs. Elridge," the preacher said warmly. Mrs. Elridge, Sarah Elridge. It was real now, official and legal and permanent. Sarah was married. She had a husband who loved her, who valued her, who had just promised before God and witnesses to stand by her side for the rest of their lives. They signed the marriage certificate, Owen paid the preacher generously, and then they walked out of the church as husband and wife. The sun was setting over the mountains, painting everything in shades of gold and pink, and Sarah had never seen anything more beautiful. "How do you feel?" Owen asked, his arm around her waist. "Like I am dreaming," Sarah admitted. "Like I'm going to wake up and find myself back in Fort Worth scrubbing floors." "Not a dream," Owen said, pulling her close. "This is real, Sarah. You are mine and I am yours, forever." "Forever," Sarah repeated, savoring the word. She had never thought she would have forever with anyone. They spent their wedding night in a hotel in Leadville, and it was the first time Sarah had ever slept in an actual bed with clean sheets and a soft mattress. Owen was gentle and patient with her, mindful of her inexperience, and when they finally came together as husband and wife, Sarah felt like she had finally found the piece of herself she had always been missing. Afterward, they lay tangled together in the darkness, Owen's arms around her and Sarah's head on his chest. "I love you," Owen said quietly. "I know I have said it before, but I want to say it now as your husband. I love you, Sarah Elridge." "I love you too," Sarah said, the words coming easily now. "I think I started loving you the moment you stood up for me in the saloon. You were the first person who ever made me feel like I mattered." "You do matter," Owen said fiercely. "You matter more than anything, and I'm going to spend the rest of my life proving that to you." "You already have," Sarah whispered. They spent 2 days in Leadville, purchasing supplies for their new life. Owen bought lumber and nails, tools and seeds, flour and sugar and coffee. He bought Sarah a new dress and sturdy boots, a warm coat for the mountain winters, and a beautiful quilt made by one of the local women. He spent money freely, and when Sarah protested that it was too much, he just kissed her forehead and told her to get used to being spoiled. "I have been saving for 10 years, Owen reminded her. "I have more than enough to get us started properly. And you deserve nice things, Sarah. You have been denied them your whole life. Let me give them to you now." So Sarah allowed herself to be spoiled, choosing items carefully and feeling a sense of wonder every time Owen added something to their growing pile of supplies. She was building a home, a real home that would be hers and Owen's together. The thought still seemed surreal. On the 3rd day, they loaded everything onto Thunder and Lightning, along with a pack mule Owen purchased to carry the extra supplies. Then they rode out of Leadville, heading into the high country, leaving civilization behind. The journey to Owens Valley took 2 days of hard riding through increasingly rugged terrain. The altitude made Sarah's head ache at first, but Owen assured her she would adjust quickly. They climbed higher and higher, the air growing thinner and cooler, the pine forests thickening around them. "We are close," Owen said on the afternoon of the 2nd day, "just over this ridge." They crested the ridge, and Sarah gasped. Spread out below them was the most beautiful valley she had ever seen. It was exactly as Owen had described, a bowl-shaped depression surrounded by tree-covered mountains with a clear creek running down the center. The meadow grass was long and green, dotted with wildflowers. A small grove of aspens clustered near the creek, their leaves shimmering in the breeze. "Welcome home," Owen said softly. "It is perfect," Sarah breathed. "Owen, it is absolutely perfect." They rode down into the valley, and Sarah fell more in love with it with every step. The creek was clear enough to see the rocks on the bottom, cold and sweet when she cupped her hands to drink from it. The meadow was full of birdsong and the drone of bees working the flowers. The air smelled of pine and earth and possibility. "We will build the cabin there," Owen said, pointing to a spot near the creek, but elevated enough to avoid any spring flooding. "Close to water, but protected. The grove of aspens will give us shade in the summer, and the pines behind will block the worst of the winter wind." "When do we start?" Sarah asked eagerly. "Tomorrow," Owen said with a grin. "Tonight we celebrate. This is our land now, Sarah, ours. No one can take it from us." And they set up camp in the spot where the cabin would eventually stand. Owen built a large fire and roasted fresh trout he caught from the creek. They ate under the stars, wrapped in blankets against the mountain chill, and planned their future. "We will need to get the cabin up before the snow comes," Owen said. "That gives us about 4 months. It will be tight, but doable if we work hard. Once the cabin is done, we can add a barn for the horses and eventually some livestock. Maybe chickens first, then a milk cow. We can plant a garden in the spring, though we should still hunt and fish for most of our meat." "What can I do to help?" Sarah asked. "Everything," Owen said. "This is our project together, remember? I will handle the heavy lumber work, but you can do plenty. Chinking the logs, building furniture, planning the interior layout. Your input matters as much as mine, Sarah. This is your home, too." Sarah smiled, warmth spreading through her chest. "Our home," she corrected softly. "Our home," Owen agreed. They spent the first week clearing the building site and cutting timber. Owen worked from dawn to dusk, his powerful muscles rippling as he swung his axe and hauled logs. Sarah helped where she could, clearing brush, trimming branches, preparing the logs for construction. It was hard work, harder than anything she had done in her life, but it was satisfying in a way scrubbing saloon floors had never been. "How did I get so lucky?" Owen asked one evening as they sat by the fire, both exhausted and sore. "I come down from the mountains looking for supplies and conversation, and I find you. The woman I have been looking for my whole life without even knowing it." "I was thinking the same thing," Sarah admitted. "About luck, I mean. If you had not walked into that saloon, if you had not stood up for me, I would still be there, still being called worthless, still believing it." "Do you still believe it?" Owen asked quietly. Sarah thought about the question seriously. "No," she said finally. "Not anymore. How can I believe I am worthless when you look at me the way you do? When you work this hard to build us a life together, when you value my opinions and treat me like an equal partner? You prove every day that I am valuable, Owen. You prove it with every kind word and every action. I'm starting to believe what you have been telling me all along." "Good," Owen said, pulling her into his arms. "Because you are valuable, Sarah. You are precious, and I'm going to keep proving it to you every single day for the rest of our lives." The cabin came together slowly but surely. Owen was a skilled builder, and under his direction, the structure began to take shape. Walls rose, heavy logs notched together and fitted with precision. Sarah helped mix the mortar for chinking, filling in the gaps between logs to keep out the wind and cold. They built a stone fireplace together, hauling rocks from the creek and fitting them carefully into place. "This will keep us warm all winter," Owen said as they stood back to admire their work. "A good fireplace is the heart of a mountain home." By late September, the cabin was enclosed. It was small, just 2 rooms, but it was solid and well built. The main room served as kitchen, dining area, and living space, with the fireplace dominating one wall. The smaller room was their bedroom, with a bed frame Owen built from pine logs and the beautiful quilt from Leadville spread across it. "We need furniture," Sarah said, standing in the middle of the empty main room, "a table and chairs, shelves, storage." "Then we will make furniture," Owen said. "I am fair hand at woodworking. Just tell me what you want and I will build it for you." Over the next month, their cabin slowly transformed into a home. Owen built a sturdy table and benches, shelves for their supplies, a rocking chair for Sarah to sit by the fire. Sarah sewed curtains from fabric they had bought in Leadville, adding warmth and color to the rough log walls. She organized their supplies efficiently, creating a functional kitchen space. The first snow fell in early October, light flurries that melted by noon. But Owen said it was a warning. Winter was coming, and they needed to be ready. They worked even harder, stocking up on firewood, smoking and preserving meat, preparing for the long months ahead. Owen taught Sarah how to tan hides, how to make candles from animal fat, how to preserve food without a root cellar. Sarah proved to be a quick learner, her years of varied employment having given her a wide range of practical skills. "You know," Owen said one evening as they worked side by side preparing a deer he had shot, "I thought I would be the one doing all the teaching out here. But you have taught me plenty too." "Like what?" Sarah asked, surprised. "Like how to make a house feel like a home," Owen said. "Before you, my camps were just functional, 4 walls and a roof, somewhere to sleep and eat. But you have made our cabin beautiful, Sarah. Those curtains and the way you have arranged everything, the little touches that make it welcoming. That is all you," Sarah blushed with pleasure. "I just wanted it to feel like ours." "It does," Owen assured her. "It feels exactly like ours." The snows came in earnest in November, and Sarah experienced her first real mountain winter. Owen had not been exaggerating about how harsh it could be. The temperature dropped below freezing and stayed there for weeks. Snow piled up against the cabin walls, sometimes drifting higher than the windows. The wind howled through the pines like a living thing, and going outside for firewood or to care for the horses was a brutal ordeal. But inside the cabin, it was warm and cozy. The fireplace kept the chill at bay, and Sarah and Owen spent long evenings by the fire, talking and planning and simply being together. Owen taught her to read, something Sarah had only partially learned at the orphanage. They worked through the few books Owen owned, Sarah slowly sounding out words while Owen patiently corrected her. "You're doing great," Owen encouraged as Sarah struggled through a particularly difficult passage. "Just take your time." "I wish I had learned this properly as a child," Sarah said with frustration. "I should be better at this by now." "You are exactly where you should be," Owen said firmly. "And you are learning. That is what matters." Christmas came, and though they were isolated and alone, it was the happiest Christmas Sarah had ever experienced. Owen surprised her with a gift he had been secretly carving, a beautiful jewelry box made from pine and inlaid with lighter aspen wood in an intricate pattern. "Owen, it is beautiful," Sarah breathed, running her fingers over the smooth wood. "But I do not have any jewelry." "You will someday," Owen said confidently, "and when you do, you will have a place to keep it." Sarah gave Owen warm mittens she had knitted from wool yarn he had traded for in Leadville. It was not much, but Owen wore them constantly and praised her work to the skies. They spent Christmas Day cozy in their cabin, eating a feast of roasted grouse and wild rice, drinking coffee Owen had been saving for a special occasion. They made love by the firelight and talked about the future, about the children they hoped to have, about the life they were building together. "Next Christmas maybe we will have a baby," Sarah said wistfully. "A little one to celebrate with." "Maybe," Owen said, his hand resting on her still flat stomach. "I would like that, Sarah. I would like a whole house full of children if you are willing." "I am willing," Sarah said. "I want to give them everything I never had, love and security and the knowledge that they are wanted. I want them to grow up here in this beautiful place, free and wild and happy." "They will be," Owen promised. "Our children will be loved and valued and told every day how precious they are, just like their mother." Winter stretched on, but Sarah did not mind. She was warm and safe and loved, and that was everything. By February, she began to suspect she might be pregnant, though she did not say anything to Owen yet. She wanted to be sure. By March, she was sure. Her monthly courses had stopped, and her breasts were tender, and she felt a bone-deep certainty that a new life was growing inside her. "Owen," she said one evening as they sat by the fire, "I have something to tell you." He looked up from the trap he was mending, eyebrows raised. "What is it?" "I'm with child," Sarah said, the words coming out in a rush. "I'm fairly certain all the signs are there." Owen stared at her for a long moment, and then a slow smile spread across his face. He set aside his trap and crossed to her, pulling her into his arms and kissing her soundly. "A baby," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "Sarah, we are going to have a baby." "Are you happy?" Sarah asked, needing to hear him say it. "Happy? I'm overjoyed," Owen said, terrified and overwhelmed and absolutely overjoyed. "You're going to be a mother, Sarah. Our child is going to be so loved." "Yes," Sarah agreed, tears streaming down her face. "Yes, our baby will be so loved." Spring came slowly to the mountains, the snow retreating inch by inch as the days grew longer and warmer. By April, the meadow was emerging from its white blanket, and green shoots were pushing up through the mud. Sarah's pregnancy progressed without complication, though the morning sickness was unpleasant and Owen fretted over her constantly. "I am fine," Sarah assured him for the 100th time. "Women have been having babies since the beginning of time. I am healthy and strong, and everything is going exactly as it should." "I know," Owen said, "but I cannot help worrying. You are the most important thing in my world, Sarah. You and the baby, both." In May, Owen planted the garden Sarah had planned over the winter months: potatoes and carrots, beans and squash, herbs for cooking and medicine. Sarah worked alongside him, her growing belly making some tasks difficult but not impossible. "You should rest more," Owen said, watching her with concern as she bent to plant seeds. "I will rest when I am dead," Sarah said cheerfully. "I am pregnant, not broken, and I want to help build our life, Owen. That includes the garden." Summer came, and with it the full glory of their mountain valley. The meadow bloomed with wildflowers in a riot of colors: purple lupine, yellow arnica, white columbine. The creek ran high with snowmelt, and the garden flourished under Sarah's careful tending. She grew rounder with pregnancy, her belly swelling with their child, and Owen thought she had never been more beautiful. "You are staring," Sarah said one evening as she stood by the window, one hand on her back and the other on her belly. "I cannot help it," Owen said honestly. "You are glowing, Sarah. You are radiant. I cannot believe how lucky I am." "I am the lucky one," Sarah said. "A year ago I was scrubbing floors in Fort Worth and being called worthless. Now I am here, in this beautiful place, married to a man who loves me, carrying our child. How did my life become so perfect?" "It is not perfect," Owen said, coming to stand behind her and wrapping his arms around her. "It is hard work and isolation and challenges every day. But it is ours, and that makes it perfect enough." Sarah leaned back against his chest, feeling the solid strength of him behind her, the warmth of his arms around her, the gentle flutter of their baby moving inside her. Owen was right. It was not perfect by any conventional measure. Their cabin was small and rough. They had no neighbors for miles. They worked from dawn to dusk just to survive. But she had never been happier in her entire life. "I love you," Sarah said quietly. "I love you too," Owen replied, his voice equally soft. "More than I thought it was possible to love anyone. You and this baby. You are my entire world." The baby came in early September, on a cool morning when the aspens were just beginning to turn gold. Sarah had been feeling contractions since dawn, and by noon they were coming hard and fast. Owen had ridden to Leadville a month earlier to bring back a midwife, a practical woman named Mrs. Donnelly, who had delivered hundreds of babies and radiated calm competence. "You are doing fine, dear," Mrs. Donnelly said as Sarah labored. "Just breathe through the pain. Your body knows what to do." Owen hovered anxiously, holding Sarah's hand and feeling utterly helpless. He had faced down bears and mountain lions, had survived blizzards and avalanches, but watching Sarah in pain was the most terrifying experience of his life. "I am here," he said over and over. "I am right here, Sarah. You are doing so well." After hours of labor, their baby finally arrived, entering the world with a lusty cry that filled the cabin. "It is a boy," Mrs. Donnelly announced, wrapping the infant in a clean blanket and placing him on Sarah's chest. "A healthy, strong boy." Sarah looked down at her son with tears streaming down her face. He was perfect. 10 tiny fingers and 10 tiny toes, a shock of dark hair like his father's, and gray eyes that looked up at her with unfocused wonder. "Hello," Sarah whispered. "Hello, little one. We have been waiting for you." Owen leaned over them both, his own eyes wet with emotion. "He is perfect," he said hoarsely. "Sarah, "You did so well. He's absolutely perfect." They named him Oliver, a strong name for what they hoped would be a strong man. Owen held his son with surprising gentleness, his huge hands cradling the tiny body carefully. "I promise you," Owen said quietly to his sleeping son, "that you will always know you are loved. You will never doubt your worth or your value. Your mother and I will make sure of that." Sarah watched her husband and son, her heart so full it felt like it might burst. This was her family. These were her people. She belonged here, in this cabin, in this valley, with this man and this child. Mrs. Donnelly stayed for a week, helping Sarah recover and teaching her about caring for a newborn. Then she rode back to Leadville, leaving the small family alone in their mountain home. The first few months of parenthood were exhausting and overwhelming and absolutely wonderful. Oliver was a good baby, healthy and alert, and both Sarah and Owen fell completely in love with him. Owen proved to be a devoted father, getting up in the middle of the night to walk with his son when he was fussy, changing nappies without complaint, singing lullabies in his deep, rough voice. "You are a natural at this," Sarah said one evening, watching Owen rock Oliver to sleep. "I had a good father," Owen said quietly. "He died when I was young, but I remember him. He taught me that being a man means taking care of your family, protecting them, loving them. I'm just following his example." "He would be proud of you," Sarah said. "I hope so," Owen said. "I hope he is looking down from wherever he is and seeing that I got it right, that I found a good woman and am raising a good son." Winter came again, and this time Sarah was prepared for the isolation and the cold. With Oliver to care for, the days passed quickly. They fell into a rhythm, the three of them, a little unit against the world. When spring returned, Sarah planted the garden again, this time with Oliver strapped to her back in a carrier Owen had made from deer hide. "Look at this little one," Sarah said, showing Oliver a sprouting bean plant. "This is how food grows. We plant seeds, and with water and sun and time, they become food to keep us strong." Oliver gurgled at her, his gray eyes tracking the movement of her hands. At 6 months old, he was already showing signs of his father's size and strength, chubby and healthy and bright. 2 years passed in peaceful contentment. Owen expanded the cabin, adding a second bedroom for Oliver and a storage room for their growing supply of preserved food and goods. He built a barn for the horses and the 2 milk cows he had acquired. The garden flourished, and Sarah learned to can and preserve enough food to see them through the long winters. She also discovered she was pregnant again in the spring of their 3rd year in the valley. "Another one," she told Owen with a smile. "Are you ready to do this again?" "Always," Owen said, kissing her soundly. "I would have a dozen babies with you if you were willing." "Let us see how we feel after 2, Sarah said with a laugh. Their second child, a daughter, was born the following winter. They named her Emily, and she had Sarah's dark hair and delicate features, but Owen's gray eyes. Oliver, now 3, was fascinated by his baby sister, always wanting to help care for her. "Gentle," Sarah reminded him constantly as he tried to pat Emily's head with his chubby toddler hands. "She is little and fragile. We have to be gentle with babies." "I am gentle," Oliver insisted in his high, piping voice. "I love my baby sister." "I know you do," Sarah said, hugging her son close. "You are going to be a wonderful big brother." Life settled into a pattern. The seasons turned, the children grew, and Sarah and Owen's love deepened with every passing year. They worked hard, building their homestead into something truly impressive. Owen became known among the scattered mountain community as an honest man and a skilled hunter. People came to him for guidance about surviving in the high country, and he always helped generously. Sarah, who had once been called worthless, became known as a woman of strength and capability. The few mountain women she encountered sought her advice on gardening, on preserving food, on raising children in such an isolated place. She always shared what she knew, remembering what it was like to be alone and struggling. When Oliver was 6 and Emily 3, Sarah delivered their 3rd child, another boy they named Samuel. And 2 years after that came twins, a boy and a girl named Matthew and Margaret. Their little cabin was full of noise and chaos and love, children's laughter echoing off the log walls. "How did we end up with 5 children?" Owen asked one evening, surrounded by his offspring. Oliver was teaching Emily how to whittle, Samuel was banging on pots pretending to cook, and the twins were crawling everywhere and getting into everything. "I do not know," Sarah said with a laugh, "but I would not change it for the world." "Neither would I," Owen agreed. He looked at his family, at the life they had built together, and felt profound gratitude. "Do you remember Fort Worth?" he asked Sarah quietly. "Sometimes," Sarah admitted. "Usually when I'm reminding the children how lucky they are. I remember being cold and hungry and alone. I remember being told I was worthless every single day." "And now?" Owen prompted. "Now I know the truth," Sarah said firmly. "I was never worthless. Those people were simply too blind to see my value. But you saw it, Owen. From the very first day, you saw me when everyone else looked through me. You called me precious, and you have spent every day since proving it." "It was not hard," Owen said, pulling her into his arms despite the children climbing all over them. "You made it easy by being exactly who you are, strong and brave and kind. I am the lucky one, Sarah. I found you when I was not even looking, and you gave me everything I did not know I needed." "We gave each other what we needed," Sarah corrected. "That is what love is supposed to be, is it not? Two people making each other stronger and happier and better?" "Yes," Owen agreed. "That is exactly what it is supposed to be." The children grew, and the homestead grew with them. Oliver became a skilled hunter like his father, ranging through the mountains with a maturity beyond his years. Emily was thoughtful and artistic, drawing pictures of the valley and the wildlife with charcoal on pieces of wood. Samuel was the adventurous one, always climbing trees and exploring, giving his parents constant heart attacks with his fearlessness. The twins were still young, but already showing distinct personalities. Matthew was quiet and observant, while Margaret was bold and talkative. "They are all so different," Sarah marveled one day as she watched her children playing in the meadow. All from the same two parents, but each one completely unique. "That is what makes it interesting," Owen said, "watching them grow into whoever they are meant to be, making sure they all know they are loved exactly as they are." "You are a good father," Sarah said, not for the first time. "I have a good partner," Owen replied. "You do most of the heavy lifting with the children, Sarah. I just follow your lead." "We are a team," Sarah said, "just like we have always been." Years passed in contentment. The children grew toward adulthood, each one strong and capable in their own way. They were raised with love and discipline, with the knowledge that they were valued and wanted. None of them would ever experience what Sarah had experienced, that crushing belief in their own worthlessness. Owen and Sarah made sure of that. On the 20th anniversary of the day they met in Fort Worth, Owen and Sarah sat on the porch of their now expanded cabin, watching the sunset paint the mountains gold and pink. The children were inside preparing dinner, the sounds of their cheerful bickering drifting out through the open windows. 20 years, Sarah said wonderingly. "Can you believe it has been 20 years? "Sometimes it feels like 20 days, Owen said. "Other times it feels like you have always been part of my life, like I cannot remember a time before you." "I feel the same," Sarah admitted. She looked at her hands, no longer young but strong and capable, weathered by years of work. "I'm not the same girl you met in that saloon." "No," Owen agreed. "You are not. You are stronger now, more confident. You look people in the eye, you stand up for yourself, you take no nonsense from anyone. But you know what has not changed." "What?" Sarah asked curiously. "You are still precious," Owen said simply. "Still valuable. Still the most important person in my world. That has never changed, Sarah. And it never will." Sarah felt tears prick her eyes. Even after all these years, even after thousands of days of Owen proving his love, the words still moved her. "I never get tired of hearing you say that." "Good," Owen said, "because I'm never going to stop saying it. You were the one they called worthless, Sarah, but I called you priceless, and I have proven it every single day for 20 years, and I will keep proving it for however many years we have left." "Forever," Sarah said, taking his hand and threading their fingers together. "We have forever, Owen." They sat together as the sun set and the stars emerged, the sounds of their children preparing dinner behind them, the valley spread out peaceful and beautiful before them. Sarah thought about the scared, broken girl she had been, scrubbing floors in a Texas saloon and believing herself to be worthless. She thought about the mountain man who had seen through the dirt and the fear to the person beneath. She thought about love and redemption, about finding home in the most unexpected places, about how one person's belief in you can change everything. "Thank you," Sarah said quietly. "For what?" Owen asked. "For seeing me," Sarah said. "For believing in me when nobody else did. For loving me when I did not know how to love myself. For building this life with me. For proving every single day that I am precious." "You are precious," Owen said firmly. "You always were, Sarah. I just helped you see it." Inside the cabin, one of the children called that dinner was ready. Owen and Sarah stood, hands still clasped, and walked into their home together. The table was laid with food from their garden and meat from Owen's hunting, surrounded by their 5 healthy, happy children. It was a simple life by some standards, but it was rich in everything that mattered. As they sat down to dinner, surrounded by love and laughter, Sarah looked around at her family and felt profound gratitude. She had gone from worthless to priceless, from alone to surrounded by love, from believing she had no value to knowing with absolute certainty that she was treasured. And it had all started with a mountain man who looked at a girl on her knees and saw not worthlessness, but infinite worth, who called her precious and then spent every day of his life proving it was true, who loved her with a steady, constant devotion that had transformed her from the inside out. That night, after the children were in bed and the cabin was quiet, Sarah and Owen lay together in the darkness, comfortable in the way of longtime partners. "I love you," Sarah whispered. "I love you too," Owen replied. "Today, tomorrow, and always." "Always," Sarah agreed. And in the peaceful darkness of their mountain home, surrounded by the family they had built and the life they had created together, Sarah finally allowed herself to believe completely and without reservation what Owen had been telling her for 20 years. She was precious, she was valuable, she was loved, she was home.